Hello, this is the Daily Tech News for Friday, May 2nd, 2025. We tell you what you need to know, follow up on context of stories, and help each other understand.
Today, Andy Beach tells us about how newsrooms are using AI to help save journalism, and Apple opens up payment links from apps in the U.S.
Those are two pigs flying stories. I'm Tom Merritt.
I'm Huyen now.
Let's start with what you need to know with the big story. Apple has already complied with a U.S. judge's order to change its App Store guidelines to say, quote, there is no prohibition on an app, including buttons, external links, or other calls to action, and no entitlement is required to do so. In other words, in the U.S., you can put your buttons, your links, or anything to send people off the app to pay somewhere else, and you don't have to give Apple a cut. That's the entitlement. This is the most permissive change to this guideline in the world. There are changes to these kinds of guidelines in Korea, Japan, the EU, and a few other places. All have forced Apple to loosen the restrictions, but usually they let Apple put a big warning screen on or collect fees for linking out, as they do in the European Union. In the U.S., Apple can now do nothing to stop companies from directing users to pay elsewhere. And Spotify was first in line. They were one of the people that complained about it in Europe, and they say Apple has approved the new Spotify update that includes pricing information and external payment links. Patreon also said it had issued an app update that will include external pricing and links out to pay. Companies selling digital goods may still not use an alternate in-app payment system to Apple's. I think that's getting lost in some of the hoopla here, is like you still can't do what Wayfair does and just charge your own thing in the app. You have to send them out to a browser on the phone to do the paying, you know, instead of loading the same exact page in the app. Anyway, because that's Apple's rule, that's what you have to do. If you sell physical things, you can do it all in the app. Physical goods are treated differently by Apple. Apple decides what's a physical good and what's a digital good, and occasionally they change their mind, as they did with Patreon. So there you go. When it's a brave new world for U.S. app developers, isn't it?
It's kind of amazing. I think, as you said, pigs flew, and we were all quite amazed by it. And even like, it's actually kind of funny because I think on the Android side, we're celebrating because this is just a win for everyone. And it doesn't, I mean, like, it seems like a small thing, but I definitely remember when I worked at Trello, for example, this was years ago, but got in trouble for even intimating that you could pay somewhere else on, I think, the iOS app. I might be misremembering, but I do remember there was a kerfuffle about the copy being wrong. And then App Store review. And so it's been this kind of really strange thing where you just kind of like say, you know, you can't pay for it here. and try to make like good luck. And so it's crazy, right? Like, and I think this is something that maybe users miss sometimes, like why things are so awkward and so annoying sometimes, and there's so much friction. And I talked about a little bit this yesterday with Jason, but but on the Android side, I think we're a little bit jelly. Just because this feels like such a huge leap. And, you know, obviously on the Google side, because I don't know, they played ball a little more. We have like better opportunities with third party billing, but we don't have this. So it's kind of amazing how things have been leapfrogging for us in different ways. I don't know. Like now everyone's just like, so Google, your turn. So, which is, probably won't happen unless something like this, obviously the hands are always forced in this kind of thing, but I think it's amazing. I love it. I'm very happy for all my iOS dev friends, but it's amazing.
Yeah, I think the difference between yesterday when we were talking about the actual decision and today we have an app. You can go download a Spotify app in the United States, of course, and see it in action. So I still think it's ridiculous that you have to link out to the browser. Like we're still jumping through hoops that don't need to be jumped through, that you wouldn't do on the desktop, right?
Nope.
But that's where we are.
Right there. And that's like the reality that we still live in. And that's the reality we still live in, but it's getting better.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a big step forward for sure.
Yeah. Well, Apple also reported earnings yesterday, and there are a few notable things from that. The company beat expectations overall. However, services, while still growing and therefore still setting a record every time, since it hasn't dropped, fell short of what analysts had expected. So they're growing, but they're not growing as much as the analysts had thought that they might. So still a record, but that's not good news for a company that is banking its future on services, of course. However, the miss wasn't huge. Apple also saw a decline in sales in China, which was not surprising, but still a problem for the company.
Yeah, Apple said it estimates new tariffs in the U.S. are going to add about $900 million to its costs this quarter, which with billions of dollars coming in, it's kind of hard to wrap your head around how much that is. But that's $900 million they wouldn't have to pay if there weren't tariffs. About half the iPhones sold in the U.S. are made in India now, and most of its other products now come from the U.S. or Vietnam. That means they have lower tariffs or none if they're coming from the U.S. than products coming from China. Apple expects it will get a significant number of its chips from within U.S. this year because TSMC's U.S. plants are supplying chips for low-end iPads and watches.
Well, DTNS is made possible by you, the listener, thanks to Mike Cortez, Aaron Sturr, Ken Hayes, and Gary Williamson.
There's more we need to know today. Let's get right to the briefs.
Well, Rockstar Games announced it will, unfortunately, not ship Grand Theft Auto 6 this year, delaying the launch until May 2026. Rockstar says it wants to, quote, deliver at the level of quality you expect and deserve. GTA 5, of course, is the second best-selling game of all time. GTA 5 was released in 2013, and GTA 6 was first announced with a trailer in December 2023. So it's been a minute.
Yeah. Everybody's mad, but also this is what Rockstar does, so I don't think anybody's surprised. They're just disappointed, right?
As the wife of a husband who's playing currently Expedition 33 and who loves it, he's kind of glad because that means that GTA 6 just won't automatically take Game of the Year, and that so his current favorite game has a good shot. So,
that's a good way to think about it.
Yeah, there you go.
GTA 6 just leaving the field open,
exactly.
being generous, and honestly, people complain if a game is rushed all the time. So you probably shouldn't complain too much if a company says, we want to make sure it's not rushed. We want to make sure it's good.
Especially for something like GTA 6 where expectations are, shall we say, ridiculous. A little high. Yes.
Microsoft is no longer issuing passwords to people who make new Microsoft accounts. You'll get an email. You'll give your email address and get a verification code by email to confirm your identity. Once you've signed in that way, Microsoft will ask you to create a passkey, which will then let you use your device's biometrics to log in. Existing users still have their passwords, but Microsoft will start prompting them to use passkeys as well. The idea is to get as many people as possible using passkeys so the company can eventually phase out password support. And another little tidbit here, Microsoft teased a new Surface device with Copilot Plus coming May 6th. So that would be announced 2 weeks before Microsoft Build. I think you can still force Microsoft to let you use a password in a new account, but they're just making it not obvious how to do that to try to just get people to use passkeys.
I like this, like a weird security through obfuscation, but obfuscating what your options are. So you pick what they want you to do.
And I think this is good. This is how we get to the passwordless future, and it will only be more secure when there isn't a password that anyone can go and use. So you've got to get to that point, and I guess this is how you get to that point.
Well, Epic Games says it will take 0% commission on the first $1 million of revenue generated by games in its app store. After that, the commission goes up to 12%. Epic is also launching something called web shops that game developers can use to offer items for purchase outside of the Apple and Google App Store systems where it is allowed. Both these plans launch in June.
Yeah, the commission is clearly a stab at the 30% that Google and Apple take. Like, we're not going to take any for the first million, and then we're only going to take 12%, which is very competitive. That's good. This web shops, though, is really like Apple has to let you go outside the app for payments. You might not have a way to do that you like. Here, let's help you create a way to do that you'll like. I think that's pretty great, too.
Just imagine years ago, like, you would never imagine that Epic Games would be, the guiding light, the good guy, let's say, in the situation. And they're just hovering around Apple and Google being like, hey, you want to do the right thing? You want to do the right thing? Well, here's the right thing, buddies. Anyway.
Yeah, I don't know if they're doing it in a good, it's almost like a gray hat way because they're so taunting about it. But yeah, I know what you mean. Amazon reported better than expected earnings, but it expects to make less money this quarter than analysts expected due to tariff uncertainty. So they beat the expectations for Q1, but they're already saying like Q2, we're not going to make as much as you even think we're going to make. Few notes from the earnings call worth noting. Amazon's ad business beat estimates, growing 19%. You might not even realize that Amazon has an ad business, but it's now squarely behind Google and Meta in the ad space and the fastest growing of the bunch. However, Amazon Web Services, which is Amazon's shining star, it is the leading cloud provider, missed expectations. Still grew 16.9%, so it's not like it's in trouble, but not growing as fast as people thought it would. Microsoft, however, grew faster than expected in cloud. Google has been making gains as well, so cloud service is getting more competitive. Finally, CEO Andy Jassy said the new improved version of Amazon's voice assistant, what's her name, Plus, has rolled out to 100,000 of the 600 million devices that can run it. So that explains why I haven't got it, because it hasn't rolled out to that many yet.
Well, a new soccer video game released Thursday and is worth knowing about since it's getting quite a bit of buzz. Despelote has you play as a young child in Ecuador. It's a fictionalized version of creator Julian Cordero's childhood. You play street soccer, video game soccer, and a few loose matches while the story of Ecuador during the 2002 World Cup qualification takes place around you. The graphics are line drawing style over photos from Ecuador.
It's interesting. It's a soccer game, but you're not like playing FIFA. You're not playing teams. You're playing someone's childhood as a soccer lover, and these political events happen in the background that you may or may not notice as you're playing around. It looks really interesting.
Yeah, it's like the anti FIFA because you're not a team level. It's very personal, and it's not pro. You're not a superstar. You're just someone who loves soccer. And I think like the review on Aftermath, that site it has loose and meandering more of a feeling than a narrative. So as the kids say, it's more of a vibe, but maybe and I like that so much because rather than being something like this very concrete thing, like FIFA being a game, it's literally like kind of like going back to childhood. And as you said, like, the adults are having conversations around you and like it tries to capture, it seems like it's trying to capture that feeling, which I think is kind of delightful, especially again, since you think soccer video game, you think, how can you not think but FIFA?
Yeah,
but it seems really cool.
I'm going to play a bunch of matches and I'm going to be messy and blah, 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 blah. And that's this is more like Last of Us, right? It's like a narrative style game. Yeah. Just with soccer as the topic instead of, zombies. Let's round up a few trade-oriented stories for you. China's BYD and Chery have been selling more plug-in hybrids in the European Union after the region instituted its own tariffs on EVs there in July last year. Temu says it will stop selling goods coming directly from China to customers of its U.S. store. That's pretty much been Temu's whole business, is drop shipping things directly from China. Instead, orders will be fulfilled from within the U.S. And China issued an exemption for imports of some chips coming from the U.S. that are needed to build cars in China. You heard that right. China issued the exemption for imports of chips from the U.S. These are needed for automotive stuff.
All right. And a couple of AI tidbits for you. Kakao has launched the first multimodal large language model in Korea, capable of handling text, voice, and images simultaneously. And Kanana includes speech and motion recognition and analyzes nonverbal cues like intonation and voice patterns. It can understand regional dialects in Korea and translate them to standard Korean. And Google's Notebook LM apps for Android and iOS now have App Store listings, indicating they will launch on May 20th, the first day of Google I.O. Notebook LM is the one that does note summaries, including one option to have them read by fake podcast-like voices.
That's right, Huyen.
Yes, Jason.
We're going to take a deep dive into that. No, we're not. That's just, I can't even do the Notebook LM voices anymore. It's, I'm just too human.
Are you excited for Kanana?
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 Yeah. Maybe I can learn some Busan Saturi if I can go use the dialect translation.
Is Saturi the word for dialect in Korean? Nice.
Yeah. Reddit's generated Reddit Answers tool will be added to Reddit's site-wide search. Up until now, it had its own separate section of the site. Reddit Answers has 1 million weekly users, so they want to boost that by making it easier to get to. Meanwhile, if you remember all those unpopular changes Reddit made in order to improve its bottom line, you may recall everyone wondering if the number of users saying they would stop using Reddit was really as many as they said, and whether it would impact Reddit's effort to improve its revenue. Well, turns out it didn't impact Reddit's effort to improve its revenue negatively. Reddit reported Q2 sales will beat expectations, earning 13 cents a share versus the expected 2 cents a share, and revenue rose 61% on the year. Global daily active unique users, though, you're like, yeah, they raised all the money, but do they have more users? They do. 31%, up 31% on the year. So all you folks who said you were going to stop using Reddit, either there weren't very many of you or you lied.
All right. Well, the following story is being misinterpreted in some places. So the Irish Data Protection Commission fined TikTok Friday for failing to show that it protected EU user data from Chinese government access. That does not mean that TikTok was caught sharing it. It means TikTok didn't do the required work to prove it wasn't sharing it. So it wasn't doing its homework. TikTok operated Project Clover in the EU, which keeps user data on servers in Norway and Ireland and purports to only send limited user data, no email addresses or IP addresses, to its servers in China. So the company now has 6 months to either show those protections or stop sending any EU user data outside the region. TikTok said it will appeal the fine.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying they aren't sending that data. It's just that you can't know, right? Because they didn't do the work they needed to do to show that.
Got to show their work.
Yep. Show your work. Come on. This is just like algebra. Those are the essentials for today. Let's dive a little deeper.
Well, when it comes to AI and news, companies promise it can help reporters do better journalism, while many in the industry fear it will kill news gathering and leave us with inaccurate drivel. The truth, as so often it is somewhere in between. So we talked with Andy Beach about where he thinks it falls.
Andy, thanks again for joining us to help us understand this, man. I appreciate it.
No, absolutely, Tom. Thanks for having me back.
Okay, so AI, will it kill or save the news? Where do you fall?
Well, I think even this article that I found on the New Yorker recently recognizes that the reality is it's going to help, but it has to be done in a cautious way. And what I mean by that and what they talked about is the realities of today are that there's an ever shrinking number of people who are active working journalists. So according to a U.S. Department of Labor stat that's in the piece, there are less journalists in the U.S. than there are DoorDash drivers in New York City. And so that doesn't mean we still don't want data and information out there. And there are places where you can automate the production of particularly sort of highlight news and other pieces. And what that actually does is it frees up time for the journalists that are working to work on more of the investigative pieces, the deep dive ones, the analysis, and the other places, which is actually great because that is the area where a human is going to do a better job than a bot or an LLM at getting into the bigger story.
Yeah, that's a bit of an unfair comparison, the DoorDash thing, because you don't need as many journalists as you need drivers. I mean, I'm sure if you go back in the 80s, there might have been fewer journalists working than taxi drivers in the United States too, right? But
100%.
But the point, if you just use it for scale, like, hey, there's not as many journalists, you could take it as, oh, we've dropped the number of journalists. But what you're saying is even if we've dropped the number of journalists that can afford to be paid by large organizations, they can do more with these tools. How does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think where they look at it is it's assisting and helping with simple things that I know I've heard you talk about on pieces before, like copy, style guide, grammar checks, other pieces. It's also a research tool. Now, this starts to get into the area where there's a lot of caution, which is there needs to still be checks in place, and we need transparency into the data sources that are being pulled from in research so that we know we're not getting hallucinations, we're not getting false or inaccurate information, or we're not getting compromised information in some way that's intentionally trying to mislead the journalist, who will then mislead the audience.
So that is an argument for the need for the human, right? The need for the journalist to kind of look at what the machines are putting out and vet it. That starts to sound a little bit, though, like what an editor does. A human journalist doesn't just publish their work straight into whatever medium they're publishing in. There's always somebody who looks it over. It's a producer or an editor or somebody like that. With more outlets, probably not as many as people think, but with more outlets publishing legitimate generated articles, not just drivel meant to drive up SEO, but attempts to actually inform people. How does that fit in here? Could that be replacing journalists, or is that more of a let's take the tedious, articles away that didn't require a lot of investigative power?
Yeah, so I think the roles of the journalists change, but they don't go away. But they are allowed to. They effectively all have a lot of assistance. And you're right; it does sound like maybe an editor or editorial in other parts of the industry. And I've heard Satya Nadella actually use this in meetings before, where we talk about workers becoming an orchestrator or a conductor of an orchestra of many agents and many different AI pieces to do their work. So you're offloading pieces of it, but you have to be there to ultimately pull it together. And the thing that the journalist now gets to focus on is finding and culling and carving out the pieces that are important to the audience, based on effectively the human algorithm, not an AI algorithm.
Yeah. And I think the generative models may get good enough to do this at some point, but I feel like they're a little far away from being able to have the nuance and understanding that people have. And I think people see that. So article to article, I could buy the argument that, well, the human article is always going to be more valuable, and therefore it will get more attention and get more pickup in the long run. But if people aren't reading the articles at all, what happens then, right? So that's the other part, is the journalist isn't the only one using these tools. The readers are too, and often they're saying, like, can you just tell me what's in this article in a paragraph? Yeah,
absolutely. And they definitely go into a little bit of that here as well, and acknowledge that, the other side of this is true. Not only people creating content are going to be using it, people consuming it are going to be using it to both summarize and aggregate the broader pieces. But again, I think that assistance is going to help you dive in. You never would have been able to read all the content that was being published before, and you never did, but now you can sort of skim across it much greater. This is similar to what happened when, the internet became obviously so big and so popular and became a publishing tool. The scope of where we got our data expanded, but it meant that we were a little more shallow. We weren't as deep into the wells as we were. This allows us to get that broad view, but then find the moments and places we as readers want to dive in and understand and explore in more in depth.
It would be great if these tools could actually judge reliability. Because I think one of the problems we face now is there are too many sources out there.
Right.
Some are citizen journalists who are of varying levels of reliability, some very reliable, some not reliable at all. And then you have access to every publication on earth now in a way that you never did before. So being able to say, well, where should I read to be well informed would be good. I wonder, this is not in the scope of the article that you were talking about, but I wonder if there's a role for tools to be able to reliably tell us the valuable reporting that's out there.
I think there absolutely is. And again, you said it earlier, it's not something that's necessarily there yet, but I think as these types of tools continue to evolve and mature, that is likely one of the other roles an agent will have, is sort of providing the Rotten Tomatoes score effectively of this content. And that's probably some sort of aggregate of opinions and feedback, and but it's also a little bit of a fingerprint of the quality of the content that you see and the sourcing and that you get from it.
All right.
There was one.
Yeah, go ahead.
There was one quote before we jump off of it that was in here that I wanted to call out that I thought was very valuable. It seems to me that AI could improve the news if it doesn't destroy it in the process. So this is Josh, the writer, acknowledging that it's early days, and this is not a thing we're going to stop talking about anytime soon. We haven't solved it, but we're exploring and we're heading in the right direction to see what works, and we're going to find out also what doesn't work.
That's what I was going to ask you, is where on that scale do you fall? If you had to place your chips, is it on the destroy or the improve? It
will ultimately improve it. And I actually wrote about this in one of my own pieces recently, that this is exactly the right kind of movement. This is effectively interventionist behavior, where we are trying the pieces out, but we're not going to continue to use them. We will iterate, and we will find the editors behind these publications are going to update and alter the workflows over time as they find the pieces that get them the quality that they want, but the automation and the repurposing that they need in order to make it valuable.
Speaking of your stuff, where can folks find your human sourced writings?
My human source, but AI assisted writing can be found over at abeach.substack.com.
Andy, thanks so much, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Tom.
We love to hear from the people who support the show because we make it for you. So if you have a few minutes, could you please fill out our annual DTNS survey? Let us know about the DTNS family of shows, what you think is working for you, what might not be. It's fun to do because there are questions about pie, and it really helps us shape the show. So go take it right now if you can. dailytechnewsshow.com/survey.
We end every episode of DTNS with some shared wisdom. Today, Matt is helping us understand.
Yeah, Matt writes, I really enjoyed your recent discussion about identity management on DTNS 5009. Your points got me thinking about some existing solutions that might address the concerns you raised. Did you know that login.gov already uses OpenID Connect built on OAuth 2.0? They've implemented it following the iGov profile standard, which is pretty much what you described, a standardized privacy-preserving identity system that's already serving government services. I've been working in this space as a software engineer at AWS, working with identity in Amazon Just Walk Out stores for the past couple of years. From my perspective, the challenge isn't so much technical as it is about trust. Many companies hesitate to rely on external identity providers beyond giants like Google or Microsoft, even when the underlying technical standards are robust and secure. Everyone only trusts themselves, and there's not an external identity provider that is happy. This keeps us in kind of a forever lock until someone makes a move. And I think government, but that might take a second with the current topic. But yeah, I think what he's saying is, current conditions aside, if the government were to push login.gov as a solution to all kinds of logging in, then that might get companies to sign on. But I bet it would make a lot of people not want to use it because it's the government. So you got that conundrum there.
Yeah, it seems like there's like a huge theme a lot of times with all these kind of different stories where it's all, and as Matt aptly said, it's not about like the robustness and the actual standards and implementation. It's just about people and trust and who you are willing to trust to do what they say they are going to do. Which,
yeah, that's why I think it has to be an external provider that only does that. So that there's less of a perception that like, well, they're just trying to get me to use it because they're going to do what, blah, blah, blah. But then it's harder to get the companies on board when that's the case.
Yeah, because again, they probably only trust themselves.
Yep,
only trust
exactly,
themselves.
That's it. Yeah.
All right. Well, what are you thinking about? Do you have some insight into a story? Please share it with us. Feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com.
Big thanks to Andy Beach and big thanks to Matt for contributing to today's show. Thank you for being along for the show. It's made possible by our patrons, patreon.com/DTNS. Don't forget, you can get this show without advertisements if you're not already on Patreon or Substack. Go check out dailytechnewsshow.com/subscribe to find out more about that. Talk to you on Monday. This week's episodes of Daily Tech News Show were created by the following people. Host, producer, and writer Tom Merritt. Host and writer Jason Howell. Co-host Rob Dunwood. Co-host Jen Cutter. Co-host Wentway Dow. Co-host Shannon Morris. Producer Anthony Lemos. Producer Roger Chang. Editor Hammond Chamberlain. Editor Victor Bognot. Science correspondent Dr. Nikki Ackermans. Social media producer and moderator Zoe Detterding. Our mods: Beatmaster W. Scottus 1, BioCow, Captain Kipper, Steve Guadarrama, Paul Reese, Matthew J. Stevens, a.k.a. Gadget Virtuoso, and J.D. Galloway. Modded video hosting by Dan Christensen. Music provided by Martin Bell and Dan Luters. Art by Len Peralta. Acast ad support from Tatiana Matias. Patreon support from Tom McNeil. Our guests this week's included Andy Beach, Sean Hollister, and Bodie Grimm. And thanks to all our patrons who make the show possible.
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.